Salutations, every pup, and welcome to Chapter 10 of Ignore the Dementor by NinjaPandaScholar. And as always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 10 End of Term Snacks. Notes. I'm not sticking strictly to the timeline from the book. I'll keep close, but I'm moving things around as they make most sense with the progression of the story. Harry was extremely happy, peaceful, and warm for the first time in a long time as he flew high above the Quidditch stands and feasted on the excitement rolling off the student body during the Gryffindor versus Slytherin Quidditch game. His positive feelings were laced with an underlying feeling of guilt at feeding from his fellow students, but he was careful to not do anything to actually affect the students in any way, so he justified it to himself. The Gryffindor and Slytherin teams zoomed around below him while Harry kept one eye on the snitch. The advantage of being obsessed with shiny things apparently translated to him not being able to miss the golden ball wherever it was. However, it wouldn't do to end the game too early and miss the wonderful feast. It was obvious to him now why the Dementors in his third year couldn't avoid crashing the Quidditch game. It was just so delicious. Potter, whatever you're doing, stop it, Malfoy growled as he came up level to where Harry was hovering. My broom is starting to develop ice crystals. Then fly lower, Harry grinned at the other seeker, but did rein in his aura significantly. If you didn't follow me so close, you wouldn't even notice. No using creature powers during Quidditch, the blonde almost huffed in annoyance. How do you like it if I start messing with you? You're supposed to be inconspicuous, you idiot! First of all, I'm too far up for anyone that isn't sitting right on my ass to notice. And secondly, considering I have no idea what you are, maybe I'd like that. I don't know. The Gryffindor smirked teasingly. It felt more like remedial potions as they flew above everyone else and were alone. It was easy to forget this was Malfoy and not Draco, who was still a prat, but at least a reasonable one behind closed doors. Neville seems to think you aren't terrible anyway. Malfoy growled in frustration before Harry was hit with the most delicious wave of pure dessert, like chocolate chip biscuits and treacle tarts. Wow, the Dementor grinned dazedly. That was awesome! Do it again! Draco gave a shout of indignation. Idiotic Gryffindor! You can't even respond right! What are you? That'd be telling, Draco. Harry laughed, really wondering again what the Slytherin was and how he could convince him to do whatever he'd just done more often. I'm full now, though, so I think it might be time to end the game. Toodles! He teased as he chased off after the snitch he'd never lost sight of with Draco fast on his tail. It was the last week of the term, and in the middle of all the exams were also the last meetings of the HSMC and the DA before the holidays. Since he learned the truth, Dumbledore had been keeping an exceptionally close eye on Harry, so much so that the Dementor clearly noticed and smiled broadly at the headmaster whenever he randomly appeared, trying to non-verbally assure him that he wasn't going to go off and suck the soul from anyone in the castle. He wasn't sure if he was annoyed at the man or understood him. He was a pretty dangerous creature, in all honesty. The headmaster always just smiled back and twinkled his blue eyes reassuringly, but Harry knew he was worried. The Dementor wasn't sure if he was worried about Harry or about the other students, though. Really, it wasn't Harry the man should be worried about. It was the army of house elves. The house elves had presented a list to the teen at the end of November with the names of all the students who were either slobs, disrespectful, annoying, or genuinely pains in their arses. They requested he give them a bad day occasionally. Who knew the happy creatures were actually pretty vindictive? He assured them that he'd start in on the list in the new year. As much as it sounded fairly unethical, he was certain Hermione would approve as a victory for Spew at the very least. When he asked Luna, she just shrugged and added a few of the Ravenclaw girls to the list at the bottom. So, all in all, it sounded like he would eat well in the new year at the very least. It was in high spirits, looking forward to going back to Grimmauld and getting out from under the worried gaze of the headmaster, that Harry stepped into remedial potions. Happy Christmas! Neville called out, from where he had an arm around a disgruntled-looking Draco, who still glared at Harry every chance he got about the last Quidditch game. Happy Christmas, Neville. Happy almost Christmas, Neville. Harry smiled back and took in the room. Most people were milling about and chatting like normal, but there was a large, dragon-like creature in the corner that was completely black and had scaly wings wrapped around him with a large, yellow eye just peeking out from under a scaly wing. What's going on there? Harry asked, wondering which student it was. Graham is still sulking about the match, Luna answered him, and gave her friend a tight hug. He's being a child, Hestia, the Ravenclaw sixth year, accused the seventh year with a glare. Montague, the gargoyle, just huffed and laid a wing over his sharp, pointed ears on either side of his head. It really was a great catch, Harry. Eyre smiled at him, with a laugh towards the sulky gargoyle. Ginny and Michael broke up! Colin exclaimed as he and Dennis ran into the room. Everyone groaned, even Harry, who had gotten used to Colin's regular updates on his, hopefully, mate. Matthew very dramatically sighed and banged his head on the table he was sitting at with Brooke and David. Brooke patted him on the head. Don't worry, you'll be fine, she reassured him. What's the countdown now? Aurelius, the half-werewolf, asked as he laid down a card nonchalantly in his game of Exploding Snap with Aisling, Aurora, and Kara. 1 week and 6 days, Draco answered for Matthew, right before he gets back to Hogwarts, though I doubt he'll find his mate before returning. She's not going to like me, Matthew groaned into the table. Everyone was completely ignoring Colin at this point, who was still vibrating with excitement from the door. Snape billowed into the room at that moment in a dark cloud of an imposing aura and physically moved the Creevy brothers out of his way. Colin, sit down and plan how to ask her out after the holidays. Matthew, your mate will like you. You're a Vila. It's almost guaranteed. Graham, stop sulking and turn back. And everyone, eat the snacks so I can leave and start my teenage-free holiday. He sneered at the room before claiming his normal armchair. A huge spread appeared on the long table in the front of the classroom, courtesy of the house elves. Deciding to hang back and observe what people took to help him guess what species they might be, Harry stood in a corner. Draco rushed over to a beautiful platter of sushi that the house elves must have spared no expense in making. Ah, no! Brooke immediately swatted his hand away, causing the blonde to glare at her. Naiads get the first run at the seafood, she smirked as Draco rolled his eyes and made a dramatic bow, gesturing to the platter. I'll try to leave you a few pieces. Harry nodded. So Brooke was a naiad, and she was dating David, a druth or a dryad. If he remembered correctly, the species were actually fairly similar. One was just connected to the land, and one the water. He wondered at Snape's comment from the first meeting that their species were not supposed to like each other. That sounded like a soap opera if he'd ever heard of one, and he made a mental note to sit with them and talk later. Most of the other food was fairly normal, with the biscuits, cakes, finger sandwiches, and crisps. There was a large bowl of what looked like crickets and earthworms off to the side, though. He watched Hestia scoop some up with her on her plate, besides a piece of cake, as well as Luna, who put some on a piece of bread. He wrinkled his nose at that, but assumed it probably wasn't any stranger than him eating people's emotions. The normal pitcher of blood was visited by Snape, of course, as well as the third-year Ravenclaw, Bartholomew. Harry marked him as a maybe vampire in his head. That was all he was able to get from the food before Luna pulled him over to sit with Neville, Draco, David, and Brooke. She pushed a plate of cake and biscuits into his hand. Treat Jimmy a bit, she quietly ordered him, as he just shook his head and laughed. What are all of you doing for the holidays? Luna asked the group as she bit into her cricket sandwich with a crunch. Normal Christmas with my gran, and visit my parents at St. Mungo's, Neville said. Harry almost choked on a piece of biscuit as Draco put an arm around Neville comfortingly at his last statement. He had a vague idea about what happened to Neville's parents from comments made by Mad Eye Moody, but knew better than to ask for more details. I'll be staying in my room and trying to avoid any visitors we might have in the manor, Draco drawled, with the disgust wrinkled of his nose. Harry tilted his head and observed the Slytherin better. I thought you would be excited to see any visitors that may come to your manor from what you've said in the past, he asked mildly with a raise of an eyebrow. Harry, the blonde sighed, and Neville gave his hand a bit of a squeeze. I do what I must. I'm not a creature with any helpful offensive skills, unlike Graham and a few others in here. Neither of my parents inherited a creature trait, and they both think me weak, which I admit I probably am. If I do what they ask of me, they won't tell our visitor what I am, and that's the most I can ask from life at this time. So don't judge what you don't understand. Harry nodded slowly. After talking with Graham earlier in the term, he realized there was more going on in the creatures' lives in this club than he would ever have imagined. Secrecy and survival seemed to be the driving factor behind everything they did outside of this one classroom. It was no way to live, in his opinion, but as he'd only been a magical creature for a little over 4 months, he figured he had no room to speak. I'll be spending the holidays with my godfather, he said slowly, looking at Draco meaningfully. I'm sure that he could help me locate a certain pure-blooded manor if there was a reason someone might need help. Draco sneered at him. I don't need your help, Potter, and I never will. Luna shook her head, radish earrings bouncing. You should take your own advice, Draco. Don't judge things you don't understand, she warned him. You mentioned there were some creatures in this room that had more offensive capabilities. Maybe don't turn down one that does out of hand. The group all looked at Harry contemplatively. Those skills would be. Draco crossed his arms, letting go of Neville. Harry shrugged. Look, I don't want anyone to know unless it is the only way, but you send for me, I might have some options for help. Irritate him enough, and he may let it slip, Snape commented dryly from the corner where they had no idea he'd been listening. The man never did look up from the potions journal he was reading. After learning what Harry was, the man seemed to completely ignore him. Harry was okay with that response. It had actually made potions class significantly easier. Luna violently smacked Harry's shoulder. Oi, what was that for? Harry rubbed the spot. You didn't tell me Severus figured it out, she accused him. Harry, you can't say things like that in front of people like Severus, Brooke hissed slowly at the Dementor from beside Draco. You'll get Draco in trouble. No matter political views, this club is theoretically safe, but it's still better not to chance it, especially with where Draco is going for the holidays. Draco just shrugged. He's my godfather. He swore on his magic to protect me, so I think I'm mildly safe anyway. Harry kept his emotions tightly out of his expression when it seemed that Draco didn't even know what side of the war his godfather was on, though it did really make sense from all their classroom interactions that Snape was Draco's godfather, now that he knew. What are you two doing over break? He turned the conversation away from politics to the soap opera he was excited to hear about. We're introducing our families, David answered, with a look of pure terror on his face. That's wonderful, Luna said dreamily off into the distance. Not really, David grimaced. My family can't visit Brooks since they live underwater, and Brooks' family don't like the idea of walking into the middle of Dryad territory. They've been arguing back and forth through Owl Post, the Naiad sighed. Unfortunately, the letters have all been coming to the two of us, and we have to keep passing the messages along. It's like being back in primary school. Meet someone neutral, Draco suggested. A nice seafood restaurant by the water. That way the Naiads can eat fish, and most restaurants have vegetarian options for the Dryads. If they get along, both parties have the option to leave early then as well. If they can't get along, both parties have the option to leave early then as well. That would work, David smiled and reached over to squeeze his girlfriend's hand. Thanks, Draco. Why don't your species get along, anyway? Harry finally asked, as he tried to force down another tasteless biscuit. Too similar, Brooke suggested with a shrug. There have been so many political issues. The biggest was the amphibian debate of 1784, since they live on both land and in the water. A lot more have stemmed from that, though. It's all very ridiculous. Isn't it all politics? Neville chuckled. Don't you have a seat on the Wizengamot? David raised an eyebrow at the high elf. Neville rolled his eyes. Inherited. It doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. A voice for creatures' rights is never a thing to take lightly. Graham joined them, finally back in his human form. Well, I still have over 2 years before I can take it up. Neville nodded contemplatively. My gran is in the seat now. As a high elf herself, I would hope she's already one of those voices. Anyone up for a game of Cluedo? Colin asked, as he and Dennis came over with the Muggle board game. The group almost sighed in relief to be distracted from their heavy political talk. Set it up and tell me what you've come up with to ask Louise let out. Draco motioned to the table and pinned the druid with a stern glare. I don't trust your plans to be non-stalkerish. Harry nodded in agreement, knowing Colin and Dennis's stalkerish habits well himself. He kept his big Dementor mouth shut, though, and just reapplied lip balm now that he'd finished the horrible human food. The last DA meeting of the term was spent practicing stunning spells and shielding spells before Dobby and Winky popped in more snacks. And the end of the club dissolved into a low-key party. Harry's Dementor senses itched every time they met in the come-and-go room. During the party, when he was less busy than normal teaching, he could concentrate on the feeling more. He was certain there was something somewhere in the room that was like what his locket used to be, another non-human soul container, a soul that he could, maybe ethically, take and eat. The DA members finally started leaving in groups of 2 or 3 to not be noticed by Umbridge, hopefully. Harry decided to hang back. It was his last chance of the term to find out what it was that was calling to him. Giving Luna a meaningful look, he leaned against one of the practice dummies and waited for the room to clear. Cho Chang seemed to be hanging back, too, for some strange reason or another. But after an intense glare from Luna that even Snape didn't seem to be immune to, the older Ravenclaw slunk out of the room with the last group. What do you think she wanted? Harry asked the fairy. Luna gave him a vague smile and walked over to where he was standing. You sensed something. I seen you look like there was something important around every time we've met in here. I feel something too, but I don't know what it is. Harry pulled his locket out from his shirt. There was a piece of soul in this when I first found it. There's something that feels like it did here in the room somewhere. Is that something common in the magical community? Is it bad that I ate the piece of soul in here? It didn't feel recent. Harry trailed off, wondering what he was actually asking. Luna studied the locket. I've never heard of that before, but it would have to be very dark magic with ill intent to split a pure thing like a soul. Even Dementors don't split souls. It would not be a good or virtuous thing for someone to do. Harry grinned at her, getting the answer he'd been hoping for. So, it's not a bad if I eat it, then, right? She shrugged with a chuckle. I'm not your conscience. I wouldn't judge you, though. How do you propose to find it in here? The Dementor had put a lot of thought into that throughout the party. I don't think it's actually hidden in this room. I think I could ask for it, and it might appear, though. I think that's how the magic works in here, anyway. Well, give it a go, then. Luna motioned to the middle of the room with an excited look in her eyes. Harry thought hard about what he wanted and the magic that surrounded it. He opened his eyes when he heard a gasp behind him. A jewel-encrusted, crown-like thing sat before them in the middle of the room. The soul was sending delicious vibes out into the room. Harry, that looks like a diadem. Maybe Ravenclaw's lost the diadem. Luna gasped, taking a cautious step forward before her face twisted in disgust. Ew, the magic surrounding it feels terrible. The darkest I've ever felt. It's just gross. Feels delicious to me, the Dementor grinned back. This necklace might be Slytherin's lost locket, so maybe they're connected in some way. The soul kind of feels the same, but it's not like I have a lot of experience eating souls. Can you get rid of it safely? Luna asked, looking at the diadem in repulsion. Harry rolled his eyes in answer, but then he paused and looked to the door. Um, Luna, I'm going to have to leave Jamie to do this. Maybe you want to. He motioned towards the door. Luna put her hands on her hips and sent her patented glare at him. Harry James Potter, what makes you think I'd think any less of you if I saw you in your true form? And saw me eat a soul? He raised an eyebrow questioningly. You saw me eat crickets 2 days ago, she shrugged. I don't see an issue here. Why do you? Harry smiled brilliantly at his friend. I'm going to marry this girl, came unbidden as a thought that flew through his mind. He shook his head, not knowing where that came from, but knowing he'd actually have to analyze that at some point. Based on what Sirius had told him of his dad and mom and how they had gotten together, he thought it might be some sort of genetic thing. Okay, look out for Jamie, then, he said as he lay on the floor, since there weren't any chairs around except for the bean bags that probably wouldn't hold up the body without him in it. Harry rose out of the body and floated over towards the maybe diadem. By the time he turned to look back at Luna, she had already sat on the floor and had Jamie's head in her lap. He smiled at her, even though she couldn't see it under his hood. You look gorgeous, dear. She grinned up at him playfully. Harry chuckled, his hauntingly echoing chuckle, and turned to the soul. He held out for a moment, savoring the feeling. Then he picked up the soul container and happily absorbed the soul. It was the same spicy, chocolatey taste of the one in the locket. It warmed his insides like the best hot chocolate he'd ever had. Ah, that's much better, Luna exclaimed from where she was combing Jamie's hair with her fingers. All that nastiness is gone. It was giving me a headache. He hovered back over to his body and set the diadem on the floor before picking up the body again. Hey, it tastes good? Luna smiled as the eyes in the body lit up again. So good. Harry smiled up at her, loving the feeling of her fingers in his hair. You sure you aren't freaked out? Luna glared at him and gave his hair a sharp tug. Don't you think bad things about my friends, even when those friends are yourself? Laughing, he stood and picked up the diadem to inspect it with his human eyes. It's beautiful, he breathed out in awe, taking in the sparkling jewels that caught the light from the torches just right. It is quite pretty, Luna agreed, looking at it over his shoulder. Harry stared at the brilliantly shining diadem, lost in the shine from the stones, and raised it to his head automatically. Oh, hell no! Luna exclaimed, before taking the diadem from his hands. She quickly transfigured the priceless artifact into a bracelet and slipped it onto Harry's wrist, smirking at him the whole time. It's still not very manly, but at least it isn't a crown. I may be eccentric, but even I don't want to walk around with you wearing that thing on your head. Plus, I can see it better now, he grinned at her before his smile fell. I really can't help it, you know. Shiny things just call to me. Harry, it's fine, Luna smiled and wrapped her arms around him. We all have something like that. Mine is colors. I absolutely love the brightest colors possible. And Neville has plants. He treats them like people. And whatever his obsession with Malfoy is, Harry chuckled, feeling much better that he wasn't alone in this. Definitely, she laughed and pulled him towards the door. So, you just enjoy your new shiny bracelet and don't worry about what anyone else says. As long as I don't wear it on my head, the Dementor joked, as his friend rolled her eyes. Oh, please. If you insisted on wearing it on your head, you know I'd be the first to stick up for you. But I know you wouldn't want that picture in the Daily Prophet, am I right? Lena remarked wryly, as they exited the room of requirement. Harry winced, thinking of how that'd go. Yeah, Ron would never let me live that down. It was a flurry of activity as everyone threw last minute items in their trunk and headed out of the dorms for Christmas. This year, Harry, Hermione, and all the Weasleys were leaving the castle for the first time ever. Snape was probably beside himself in glee, if anyone could tell. Harry had received a note at breakfast when Hedwig flew to the table from Dumbledore, explaining that Harry would be leaving the castle through the flue in his office instead of the train. The headmaster explained that no matter how indestructible Harry was currently, it was probably best he didn't draw any unwanted attention to the train, and the older man was certain Voldemort was planning something. "What's with the new accessory?" Ron asked, between bites, as they hurried to finish their breakfast and grab their things. Harry glanced down at his new bracelet with a smile. "Luna got it for me," he said, sort of telling the truth. "Well, that was very nice of her," Hermione said, also looking questioningly at the bracelet. "Are those stones real? They look real." Harry shrugged. "We found it in the come and go room, so no telling. It's probably really old, though." I'd hate to tell you, but that looks like a chick bracelet, mate," Ron sniggered over his teacup. Harry glared at him and took the last bite of his eggs before leaving the table in a huff. He didn't even know why he was mad, but leaving seemed like a better idea than yelling when he wasn't even sure why he was angry. "Harry, wait up!" Hermione called as she caught up to him on the stairs. "It's really nice Luna got you that bracelet. Don't listen to Ron." "Thanks, Hermione." Harry smiled at her, his mood lifting. "Have a good Christmas, okay?" "You too. Stay safe, and don't let Snuffles do anything dangerous." Harry shrugged. "You know, Snuffles. I'll do my best. I think Remus is staying with us too, so he'll help." Hermione seemed to breathe a sigh of relief at that. She must really not trust Sirius as an adult figure. Harry concluded with a mental shrug. It wasn't wrong, he guessed. "Great. See you in the new year, then," she smiled, as they got to the tower to grab their things and separate to go to the headmaster's office and the train. Author's notes. Updated HSMC characters and what Harry currently knows. Severus Snape. Sponsor. Slytherin Head of House. Vampire. Graham Montague. 7th year. Slytherin. Gargoyle. Matthew Bastian. 7th year. Hufflepuff. Vila. Hestia Talon. 6th year. Ravenclaw. Unknown. Brooke Bay. 6th year. Hufflepuff. Naiad. David Birch. 6th year. Hufflepuff. Druce. Or Dryad. Harry Potter. 5th year. Gryffindor. Dementor. Neville Longbottom. 5th year. Gryffindor. High Elf. Draco Malfoy. 5th year. Slytherin. Unknown. Luna Lovegood, 4th year, Ravenclaw, Fairy. Colin Creevy, 4th year, Gryffindor, Druid. Kara Brynhilder, 4th year, Slytherin, Unknown. Aurora Jones, 3rd year, Hufflepuff, half werewolf. Aurelius Jones, 3rd year, Ravenclaw, half werewolf. Bartholomew Beetle, 3rd year, Ravenclaw, vampire. Dennis Creevy, 2nd year, Gryffindor, Druid. Air Herja, 2nd year, Gryffindor, Unknown. Aisling Hessop, 1st year, Slytherin, Vila. And that is a wrap on Chapter 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Not really much of a cliffhanger, but exciting stuff. Next chapters is like the start of Christmas break. So that's exciting. I really hope my mic wasn't too quiet this entire time. But if it is, oh well, sorry. I'm not re recording. It's been 30 minutes. I hope you guys enjoy this a lot, and please go show the original author, NinjaPandaScholar, some love. Please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments so much. And I'm gonna start asking you guys for hate comments too. I've been asking my Broccoli Fic readers, listeners, for hate comments. So, someone leave me a hate comment, and I'll shout you out. That's the way to get shout outs. Leave a hate comment. It can be as real, as funny as you want. Just it has to be a hate comment because I think it's funny and I'm weird like that. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye, pups.